Shifting focus to our top story, that is on the rise of India's diaspora as leaders in the political and governing spectrum across the globe, in financial space and much more. Basically, we will put in perspective the Indian origin people across globe at leading or perhaps at the leadership positions. And to do so, Professor Harshvardhan Pant, Vice President ORF, joins us for more. Thank you very much, Professor Pant. It's always a pleasure talking to you, sir. Now, in recent decade, we've seen India has grown as a global power and has been able also at the same time to pursue its own goals in its own way, like what we call India Way. How do you see the recent spurt in numbers, especially in one decade, the rise of Indian origin people, especially at the leadership positions in political spectrum across the leading capitals of the world?
Yeah, it has been very, I think, gratifying to see so many people of Indian origin doing so well politically across the globe. And I think what has also happened, interestingly, is that as India has risen, this trend has intersected with this idea of Indians, people of Indian origin doing well. So there has been this, it has accelerated this India story that we have been talking about. It has amplified the India story in many ways. And I do think that, a lot of factors, of course, are at play here. But certainly having people of Indian origin in key positions of power across the world, globally, it gives a great degree of satisfaction to, and it underlines the fact that Indians, wherever they are, whichever country they are serving to the best of their abilities, and they are being accepted socially and politically, unlike some of the other communities where there are reservations. You don't see that those reservations impacting Indians as they rise in social hierarchy, in political hierarchy across the world.
Indians at the decision or Indians at the decisive positions or in decision-making bodies, political and apolitical also, like IT, finance, etc. Do you also think that aids in a big way as far as India's negotiating power or India's rise as a global power, the bigger role of India at the world stage is concerned?
Certainly, I think it's a very important aspect of India's soft power. This idea that India can produce so many talented people who are serving in their own ways different spheres around the world, whether it is technology, whether it is education, whether it is social philanthropy, whether it is politics. And I think that in some ways energizes this rise of India, that gives wings to the ambitions that India is crafting for itself on the global stage. So as we look at some of these very, very specific domains that you're talking about, particularly now as we are looking at the screen, you have different IT sector, for example, dominated by the Indians. That certainly amplifies India's role in that space, that India has such a talent pool that you can have the best and the brightest holdings of these most important positions, and also reaffirming India's role as a critical voice in these domains. So when the world talks today about information technology, when it talks about data issues, data related issues, it looks at India as a key enabler in these conversations. And certainly having people of Indian origin holding these positions reaffirms that India continues to be a very, very important voice in finalizing some of the architecture that the world needs in managing these key critical domains.
Having said that, how do you see Prime Minister Modi's diaspora outreach and the way it has been made such an integral part of our foreign policy?
I think that in some ways has been the story of the last decade, where Indian diaspora has been tapped in a very in a singular fashion by the government. And I think the sense of linking, of using diaspora as a bridge between the two entities, India and the countries in which they are, has served India very well. So today when you go across the world, you can go to any country, you see Indian diaspora playing such an important part in not only making their presence felt, but they are also reassured by the fact that the government of India has their back, that the government of India supports what they are doing, and that they want to contribute to the India story as well. So I think this initiative by the Prime Minister to engage the Indian diaspora, successful as they are across the world, in the India developmental story, I think has great potential, and one hopes that it continues in the future as well, because that's an asset, that's a soft power of India that had been largely untapped before. So now that we are finally tapping into it. I think we'll have to give greater incentives, and we'll continue to see greater engagement as far as the government of India is concerned with this diaspora, which the Prime Minister has led so successfully over the last decade.
So, all these Indian origin exceptionally brilliant people at at the helm of affairs across the globe. They are, your final comments, definitely a part of the, you said New India story, I would say, you said India story, I would say New India story. New India story where we are looking at India's exceptionalism and how India is holding on its own. Your final comments on that.
Indeed, I think as India continues to grow into an economy that eventually, in a few years down the line, hopes to become a $10 trillion economy, from moving from 3, 4, 5, 7 to 10 trillion over the next decade.
Right.
It is going to be very important to leverage our power, different aspects of our power, and this is certainly the most important aspect of our soft power. And I think that's where it becomes so interesting as India looks to amplify its voice on the global stage. We have people of Indian origin at different domains and different verticals, politically so potent at the moment that we can use them and we can leverage those voices in amplifying India's voice on the global stage.
So that in a way is also adding multitude of dimensions. Final word, Professor Pant, as far as India's regional primacy is concerned. And this is only going to multiply, hopefully.
Absolutely. I think that is only going to happen because the talent pool, the demographic dividend that India has, will ensure that many more of Indians will continue to find space, find their domains across the world, and they will continue to dominate these sectors given the strengths of our inherent education and higher education structures. So I think this is a story that is likely to be further amplified in the future, and therefore India and Indian governments should be keen to see how they can leverage them much more effectively, as we have done, we have started to do over the last decade.
Right. More negotiating space and maneuvering for India's global role as an international power. On that note, thank you very much. I'm sorry, that's all we have time for. Professor Pant, such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.